Gearing up for a global day of action against Tesla, encouraging thousands.
Bet you'll be looking forward to commentating on this race. Should be plenty of action, wouldn't there?
There would indeed.
Hey man, you got something to eat up in there?
It's raw. Slow down and focus.
Although the Aston Martin is stationary, the experienced Parnell isn't wasting a second. The pace is telling.
Do you know, once in a while, I will introduce to my collection a slot car that is either limited edition, hard to get hold of, or just absolutely stunning and a classic that was never released in the first place as a limited edition, but because it came out many years ago, it then becomes a classic, hard to get hold of model. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Would you look at this? Hey, warm welcome back to the channel, everybody. Look at this. I am so happy I got my hands on this. Where I got it from was from a private seller. It is brand spanking new, okay? Even though it came out many years ago, it's always been in its case. This is the Aston Martin DB3 Mille Miglia from 1953. Well, the real version.
The Mille Miglia. This iconic motorsport remains the most famous Italian road race for automobiles, even though it ended in 1957 due to a number of fatal accidents and concerns over spectator safety. Although its route varied during its 3 decades of existence, this annual race ran from Brescia to Rome and back to Brescia. It took place on public roads, and its distance gave the race its name. Mille Miglia, Italian for 1,000 miles. From 1958, the race was turned into a timed rally but didn't really take off, so was canned in 1961. Then came the Mille Miglia retrospective, an historic reenactment of the legendary Mille Miglia road race that takes place annually.
Now would you look at this beauty? This for me is an instant classic. So the car itself is a beauty from back in the day. And this slot car representation is also a beauty from back in the day. Well, not that far back, but there are telltale signs. You can tell when a Carrera car is one of their more earlier models. And I'm not just talking about the car itself, because Carrera can produce, and Scale Electric and all these other brands, they do produce classic looking cars, but they're brand new. They've been manufactured like this year or last year or the year before. That's not what I'm talking about here. This baby, as I mentioned, was physically made many years ago by Carrera, and there are telltale signs that you can tell. For example, take a look at the name of the vehicle on the base. As you can see there, the actual name of the car and everything about it, really, the basics, is printed directly onto the base. There's no sort of separation to the rest of the base or anything like that. The newer type cases for Carrera look like this. And did you know that the actual cases themselves are bigger these days than the older cases look? This is physically smaller. I'll prove it. And don't worry, we'll get to this beautiful car in a moment, and this gorgeous one here on another day. Both Aston Martins. But yeah, a couple more differences in the case. If you look at the mirrored wall there, the checkering design there, the checker design, and look at that one. You can see on the newer one, it's got Carrera there. It doesn't have it there, but it has a smaller version there. And apart from one or two other differences that you will see straight away, especially on the top, you can see the differences here. Look, you get that nice windowed case on the newer Carrera cars. You don't get that here, but what you do get, you still get that little pack that you see inside or at the back of these cases, but it just literally leans up against that, and then you put the main case over it to keep it in place. Right, now back to this amazing Aston Martin DB3. The clothing that the drivers have on is very much of its time period. It looks very nice how it's been done there. I love the fact that it has a driver and a co-driver or navigator, because that's exactly how it was back in the day. You still have that today in modern racing, but I just love how they're represented here to really show this was from the 50s. Yeah, like that the actual navigator has his papers in his hand. I'll tell you what, let's have a closer look at the drivers. How cool do they look with the eyewear, the helmets? Again, loving the clothing there. Let's have a look at that dashboard and the steering wheel. In fact, I'll tell you what, let's just get it off the case. Do you know what? I was going to continue with the drivers, but I'll get back to that in a moment. Something else that's really caught my eye. Look at the front. Do you know, if I didn't know any better, I would have said that grille at the front on this slot car model was metal, but I don't think it is. It looks amazing. And then front headlights and the little Aston Martin badge. Do you know, as a collector of model cars, being in the slot car world or game really pleases me because it ticks both boxes. I love slot cars and I love model cars, and when they make them look as good as this in the slot car world, wow. I mean, have a look at the wheels. Look at the intricacy of that. How beautiful do those chrome rims and spokes look? And I'm loving the edge of the tyres there too, the detail. Decent. Whoa, there he is again, the floor manager. You know, whenever we get a car in that is a bit special, he always comes out and wants a closer inspection. Anyway, let's have a look at the hood. Again, the finer detail on this thing. Look, all these sections here. And then right there too, I would suggest that is some sort of airflow vent or something. But it looks awesome. And I would suggest that's pretty much the same thing we've got going on here with the 3 right there above the badge. And can I now bring your attention to the windscreen? Look how well that's been done. And you've got that little center mirror there. Excellent. Let's have a look from the inside. Look at that. Absolutely love it. So yeah, there's your mirror in the center. Again, I'm loving the outfits that these drivers have on. And if you look at their arms, doesn't it look as if their arms could possibly move up and down? Some sort of articulation on the arms? I'm not going to try it. Of course I'm not. But yeah, they look like separate pieces that can move up and down. And there, as you can see behind the drivers, the fuel cap. Again, done very well. Love that chrome effect that it has. And then of course, you have this hatch, this door right there, which I would suggest would hold maybe a spare wheel. And then if we take a look at the beauty from this angle, I love that. If you look down the center console there, you can see, I would suggest that would be the gear stick. And I'm loving the seats too. Now look at the rear. Look how pointy and thin the back of the car is. Very classic. And the little faux rear lights there, I say faux because as you could probably tell, this is not going to have any rear lights. And despite how good the front looks, those don't light up either. Now, you know me when it comes to slot cars with no lights, I don't like it. But when the cars are this classic, are this beautiful, are this back in the day, it gets a free pass from me. I don't care that it doesn't have lights. This car is stunning. Now, ooh, look at this. Very interesting for me, for someone who is, although it's been a few months now, I'm still kind of new getting back into slot cars in this way at this level. And it's interesting to see how things used to be made back in the day. In this case, Carrera. Look at this. Totally different to what you see nowadays. I mean, look at that. and then you've got your motor there. But what's that? Ah, okay, this would make sense. That's the magnet, yeah? Then you've got this big old Carrera blade there. Now I say big old. Do you know, the last time, quite some time ago, I did a... Do you remember I did, I think it was a Mercedes X-Ray car from Carrera. So the shell of the car was see-through, you could see everything. Do you know I didn't have to change the blade on that? It was the original blade on that car and it ran round my Scalextric track with no issues. That's another difference again. Back in the day, it appears that these blades were just a little bit smaller, a bit more Scalextric track friendly. And I've got a funny feeling, because I don't have a blade to replace this with, because even that's done differently, I've got a feeling that will run just fine on my Scalextric track. Well, we'll find out in a minute or so. Am I going to open this up? Because I tend not to, I don't like opening up classics, limited edition or hard to get hold of cars.
Gearing up for a global day of action against Tesla, encouraging thousands.
Bet you'll be looking forward to commentating on this race. Should be plenty of action, wouldn't there?
They would indeed.
Hey, man, you got something to eat up in there?
It's raw. Slow down and focus.
Although the Aston Martin is stationary, the experienced Parnell isn't wasting a second. The pace is telling. All around the circuit there are cars in trouble. And many of them... Parnell, delayed by some straw bales, but that hasn't stopped him. He and Collins are now both in the first 10. And here's our Ferrari, still ahead of Rossellini's. Another Aston with George Avakassis is just 2.5 minutes faster than Biondetti's Lancia.